Net zero immigration is the phrase more and more British people are using because, rightfully, they're sick to death of mass migration and the devastating impact it's had on our country.
One nation experiment in open borders.
Well, since the mass migration experiment began in the early 2000s, net migration has added nearly 10 million people to Britain, creating housing pressure equivalent to the building of around 9 cities the size of Birmingham. And you'd think our great leaders would build enough houses for that. Nope. Instead, we've crammed millions more people into existing cities, rocketing rents to insane levels, undercutting wages with cheap foreign labour and hammering the working classes. In London, foreign-born residents occupy around 48% of social housing, supply that should prioritise and be given to British people who were born and raised here. That's quite simple in my opinion, I don't know what you think. And since 2008, real GDP per capita has grown at a pathetic 0.7% a year, down from 2.5% pre-crisis, leaving us barely ahead of 2008 and 29% below trend. That's roughly, to put it in perspective, £16,500 less per person. And then you factor in soaring inflation and taxes, and what 100 grand today buys you is what £60,000 did before the crash. That is shocking. And services are also at a breaking point, as you all know. NHS dentistry access has collapsed, with 20% less people seeing a dentist in 2-year periods compared to the early 2010s. Hospital waiting lists hit 7.4 million. That's over 200% more than the 2010s' 2.4 million. Rents have surged unprecedentedly. Independent modelling shows that net migration has, well, since 2001, added roughly £130+ a month to rents for people across England and over £200 a month in London alone. That's money taken straight out of working class people's pockets, your pockets, crippling young families. And the best people can say to them is cut back on your coffee and Netflix. We need to cut back on our addiction to mass migration. That's the solution. And crime has also spiked. Record sexual offences and violent incidents have risen sharply in sustained urban communities. And when you flood the population with people from alien cultures, you overload policing and services. Is it any wonder why social cohesion frays and safety plummets? This is the result of nearly 3 decades of idiotic governance. Labour and Tory alike imported millions upon millions into the country, many wages suppressed as a result of it, and of course there's been a failure to build enough homes for literally anybody. Hospitals and prisons also failed to be built, and a slashing of police numbers, all while they've inflated the population. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out what's going to happen, does it? And they've all done this to chase headline GDP growth by inflating the population. So it looks like Britain's doing well, while actually we're all getting poorer. This is a devastating globalist agenda that has changed communities beyond recognition. It sparked cultural clashes, left us less safe, priced young British people out of homes and futures, undercut their jobs and pay with cheap labour. Well, some foreigners also land in Britain, claim benefits, get a free social house and don't integrate and contribute nothing. It is a slap in the face. And to be quite honest, I'd rather be materially poorer and have my country back than be a few quid richer every year at this point. I want a country that has a shared singular culture, one with trust and opportunity attached to it. It's not impossible. Just look at Poland. They've barely had any immigration, and they're set to overtake our actual GDP figures by 2030. Net zero migration would be a start to bring some balance to the madness. It would give us time to ease housing pressure so rents fall and houses become more affordable again. It would lift wages by reducing the competition, give services breathing room, restore community stability, and be deflationary on a massively inflated pound. It is not extreme. It is common sense, pro-British, and is long overdue.
This interruption is brought to you by ExpressVPN and their New Year deal. New Year, new VPN, and a huge saving of up to 80% if you act now. You're busy planning how to get in shape, but the hackers are planning how to get into your accounts. ExpressVPN locks down your connection so you can start the year protecting your data. So scan the QR code or click the link in the description now.
Let's get the thoughts of my panel. Journalist Linda Jubilee, pub landlord and activist Adam Brooks, and former Labour Minister Bill Rammell. Adam, I'll start with you. Net zero migration, should I say, is a word I'm seeing a lot now. It's talked about in the Telegraph today. Do you think that's a solution we should be looking to?
100%. We actually need to lose, I believe, between 2 and 3 million people from this country and stop people coming in as well. And we also have got to stop Brits that are scared of their communities, scared for their kids leaving. 250,000 left last year alone. Look, we've got towns and cities up and down the country that simply do not look like Britain anymore. There's nothing racist about saying that. We have, majorities that really just can't even speak English properly. You can go down high roads and not hear anyone speak English. That's not racist. That's an observation. And it's a true one too. We have 1.3 million foreigners claiming universal credit. How has that happened? So I spoke to a very senior politician a few weeks ago, and I said, if you have to sort this country out, you're never going to deport enough. We need to get them self-deporting. And they agreed with me. So what we have to do is stop the social housing. Give them notice. In 6 months' time, you're no longer going to get those benefits or those houses. Give them time to leave the country. Because even where we are now, Paddington, 72% of social housing in this place of London is foreign born. How have we ever got there? It's not racist. I can't stop reiterating that. We do want our country back, but we've got to stop housing the rest of the world, giving the rest of the world benefits. It's got to stop.
Linda?
See, what I would say here, Adam, is, and I agree with a lot of what you've said, but at the end of the day, I think the fundamental and underlying problem is successive governments and politicians have actually reacted to news headlines, to a populist agenda, and they've had a knee-jerk response, and they've taken short-term policies. Now, I desperately disagree with the whole Boris wave of mass immigration, of uncontrolled immigration, but the real problem we've got here at the moment, any economist will tell you this, is we've got a large and growing ageing population. We're going into a negative birth rate, and we have too few people earning money in order to pay tax into our exchequer. And I'm afraid if you simply think that getting everyone to have more babies is the answer, it isn't, because that'll take 20 years. 20 years it will take to do that. I'm not disagreeing that is a good plan. Let's get away from negative birth rate territory. But at the end of the day, we do need some people here of some expertise to help our economy along. No, not on benefits.
So
I agree with you.
Net drains.
I agree with you. No, I think we have to have people coming in with skills we don't have.
Well, credit where it's due. Unlike the last government, which in my view allowed net migration to reach a completely unsustainable million per year, it's now under this government down to about 200,000. And
as a result of Tory policy, though?
No, a Tory policy which the present government supported, and further changes that this government has brought in. And it's reduced it from 1 million to about 200,000.
And Brits leaving, Bill.
Now, there's a real debate about what is the appropriate level of net migration, and I'm not in favour of net zero.
Why?
Because you do need some migrants to fuel the economy, to do some of the jobs that we haven't got the skills for, and to do some of the jobs, frankly, that British people won't do.
Yeah, but just to come back on that a little bit, there's a lot of British people leaving the country at a time, many of them, when you ask them, most of them are young people, by the way. They're between 25 and 35 from what the data shows us. So they're young, well-educated people who are ready to work. They're wealthy enough to leave. So they're actually wealthy, good, educated people. They're leaving because it's still too expensive here. The tax rate is too high. There's no incentive to keep great, talented British people. Even our doctors and nurses, we train some of the best talent in the world, and they have to go to Australia because they can't get jobs in the NHS because we're bringing in cheap labour from Pakistan. Pakistan, for example, to fill those doctors and nurses.
Which we shouldn't have been doing.
Yeah.
And, you know, the nurse training programme, the doctor training programme was cut in half by the last government.
Yeah, it was.
We need to be training more of our own.
What do you...
But there are real concerns, for example, about the care sector, the building industry, which we need to build the homes that we need, that we will have significant skill shortages.
But Bill, you're missing the point. We have made those wages so cheap by bringing in cheap labour to suppress nurses and care workers, for example, because we're replacing them with cheap foreign labour who will do it. If we actually didn't replace those jobs with cheap foreign labour, the wage would increase massively.
And one of the first acts that this government took through the minimum wage negotiations was to increase pay within care homes. And you know, a lot of people have been squealing about that, but I think it was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
There is a balance, and I support the fact this government has significantly reduced net migration, but there's always a risk that you can go too far and you end up with real problems for the economy.
We've got to be serious about getting youngsters into employment in this country.
Yeah.
We have to be serious about that. And at the moment, I fear that we are just tinkering around the edges. You've got a huge growing band of what's called NEETs.
Yeah.
You've got people who can't get jobs, and you've got people who won't get jobs. And we have to tackle this on the ground. I've had enough of talk fests. What I want is some action on the ground to sort this problem out, because we need long-term solutions in this country. We can't keep putting a sticking plaster over what appears to be a compound fracture.
But you've got a government that rewards shirkers over workers, so why were people going to want to work in this country when it's easy to sit on your settee?
Can I just say, I personally know someone who's getting 3 lots of benefits. This is a properly trained, so-called middle-class person, a benefit, one child, benefit for another child, benefit for a husband, you know, and they should be out actually sorting out proper work. They don't need to.
Well, they do need to. You don't get the life of Riley living on benefits. However, we do need to be tougher. And one of the things I regret was that the government U-turned on the reforms to welfare benefits. Some of the changes were put in place, for example, incentivising work compared to not working. But I think the government needs to come back, and we've got the TIMS review taking place of disability benefits, and I think the government needs to return to that, because we do need to skill people up, we need to grow the economy, and part of the way that you do that is getting more people into work.
Yeah, we also have a cultural problem happening, and we can all see it happening, right? There is fracturing across Britain. There is clearly parts of Britain where you go to it, and it doesn't feel like Britain anymore. Even the people there would tell you it doesn't feel like Britain, right? Yeah. And that's a big part of this problem. And I think one thing that Poland has done so well, and many economists attribute this to Poland's success, where it's going to overtake us. It's going to overtake us. It's barely had any immigration. It's had zero illegal migration, pretty much. Where they've done so well is they've kept their cultural identity, so they don't fracture there. The government can focus on economics.
But we
Our
haven't done that.
On social policy.
That's where I agree with you. We have not done that.
Not done that.
And I've been involved in projects after the fall of Kabul. I told you, I took some time off from being a journalist. I taught Afghan women, you know, certain things, empowerment, language, etc., etc. And I used to have to disguise this. Listen to this. I had to disguise it as a sewing class so their husbands wouldn't get too annoyed they were learning an effective skill. I took them all shopping to a town I won't name. I had to go with the translator because no one spoke
And now
English.
we're importing those men, but apparently 11-year-old white boys are the problem. Misogyny, this is the sort of people that are running this country, that think that 11-year-old white boys are the problem in this country, or celebrities.
It's not.
Middle-aged, angry white men.
It's not
like
11-year-old boys.
At the end of the day, we've even got Eastern Europeans that are leaving this country because they're saying it's too dangerous, and the services are going to pot.
But this goes back to exactly what I said at the start of this debate. Hang on a minute. We have got politicians that react to news media, to populist agenda, so we put on a drama, not a documentary, called Adolescence, and everybody overreacts to it. That's what happens.
Do we need more integration? Do we need
Yes.
immigrants who come to this country
Yes.
to speak English? Yes, we do. But the danger, and, you know, I welcome the fact the government has significantly reduced net migration, but if you go too far, it has consequences.
Okay.
So one of the ways it's been reduced is international students who bring about £14 billion to our economy every year.
Let's protect
and that can be
British culture, Bill.
defeating.